The Atlanta International Airport buzzed with its usual frenetic energy, a crossroads of humanity where thousands of individual journeys intersected daily. Among the sea of travelers that particular Wednesday morning was Jimmy Donaldson, better known to millions as MrBeast, walking briskly through Concourse B with his small production team. They were on their way to catch a flight to Los Angeles, where they planned to film their next ambitious philanthropy project. A massive beach cleanup combined with a $100,000 donation to marine conservation efforts, all while challenging other content creators to match their contribution. Jimmy moved with purpose, his tall frame and distinctive facial hair making him instantly recognizable to many airport patrons despite his attempt at a low-key appearance. A simple black hoodie, jeans, and a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes. Behind him trailed 3 members of his core team, all equally focused on reaching their gate with enough time to review the logistics for their upcoming shoot. The group had been traveling almost constantly for the past month, jumping from one project to another with barely a day's rest in between. Their relentless schedule a testament to Jimmy's infamous work ethic and ambition. Gate B23 should be right around this corner, Jimmy told his team, checking the digital boarding pass on his phone. We've got about 40 minutes before they start boarding. He slowed his pace slightly, allowing his team to catch up. Nolan, his longtime friend and collaborator, was busy checking equipment lists on his tablet, ensuring they hadn't forgotten anything essential for the shoot. Chris and Chandler followed close behind, engaged in a quiet debate about potential challenges they could incorporate into the beach cleanup to make the content more engaging for viewers. The group paused briefly at a coffee kiosk, the need for caffeine outweighing their time constraints. As Jimmy placed his order, a large black coffee, his third of the morning, a commotion near the adjacent gate caught his attention. A small crowd was forming, phones raised high, their excited whispers creating a buzz of energy that stood out from the airport's usual drone. Jimmy's eyes followed their gaze, curiosity momentarily overtaking his focus on the upcoming project. Through gaps in the gathering crowd, he glimpsed a tall, lanky figure dressed in an eye-catching tracksuit, dark sunglasses perched on his nose despite being indoors. "Is that Snoop Dogg?" Chris whispered, having noticed Jimmy's distracted gaze. Jimmy nodded slowly, recognition dawning. It was indeed the legendary rapper and entertainment icon, surrounded by what appeared to be a small entourage of bodyguards and assistants. Snoop moved with his characteristic laid-back confidence, seeming unbothered by the attention he was attracting. He signed a few autographs, posed for selfies with excited fans, all while maintaining the cool, unhurried demeanor that had become as much a part of his brand as his music. Jimmy hesitated, torn between his natural inclination to stay on schedule and his genuine admiration for Snoop's career longevity and business acumen. Despite operating in completely different content spheres, Jimmy had long respected how Snoop had managed to remain relevant across decades, continuously reinventing himself while staying true to his core identity. There were lessons there that applied to Jimmy's own career trajectory in the ever-evolving landscape of digital content creation. Before he could decide whether to approach or continue to his gate, fate made the decision for him. As Snoop finished interacting with the small crowd of fans and began moving toward his own gate, his path intersected directly with Jimmy's. For a brief moment, the two content creators, one from the traditional entertainment world and one from the new digital frontier, stood face to face in the busy airport corridor. Snoop's security initially moved to create space, but the rapper waved them off, his expression shifting from casual indifference to recognition as he registered who was standing before him. To Jimmy's surprise, Snoop removed his sunglasses, a genuine smile spreading across his face. "MrBeast in the flesh," Snoop said, his distinctive drawl unmistakable even in the noisy airport. "I was just watching one of your videos with my grandson last week, the one where you built those wells in Africa. That's some real important work you're doing, young blood." Jimmy blinked in surprise, momentarily speechless at the realization that Snoop Dogg, a cultural icon whose career had begun before Jimmy was even born, not only recognized him but was familiar with his content. It was a surreal collision of entertainment worlds that neither could have anticipated that morning. "Thank you," Jimmy finally managed, extending his hand for a handshake that Snoop smoothly transformed into a casual embrace. "That really means a lot coming from you. I've been a fan since I was a kid." The sincerity in Jimmy's voice was evident. his usual confident on-camera persona giving way to a more genuine, almost starstruck reaction. Around them, travelers began to notice the unexpected meeting of these two celebrities, phones discreetly, and not so discreetly, raising to capture the moment. The collision of fan bases, MrBeast's predominantly young, digital native audience and Snoop's cross-generational admirers, created an almost electric atmosphere in the concourse. Snoop nodded appreciatively at Jimmy's comment, seemingly unbothered by the growing attention they were attracting. "What brings you to Atlanta? Giving away another island or something crazy like that?" he asked with a chuckle, referencing one of MrBeast's more extravagant videos. His casual question opened the door to conversation, the kind of natural networking that happened when different corners of the entertainment industry unexpectedly intersected. Jimmy explained their destination and the beach cleanup project, his initial nervousness fading as he slipped into discussing the work that had become his passion and purpose. "That's what's up," Snoop replied, nodding thoughtfully as Jimmy outlined the environmental and charitable aspects of the upcoming video. "You know, I've been thinking about doing more environmental work myself. My foundation focuses mostly on youth, but I've been seeing all this climate change stuff, and I feel like more of us with platforms need to step up." The conversation was evolving beyond a simple celebrity encounter into something more substantive. Two influential content creators from different generations discussing how to leverage their massive platforms for positive impact. Neither man noticed that Chandler had begun subtly filming the interaction, recognizing its potential value. As their respective teams hovered nearby, clearly anxious about departure times and schedules, Jimmy and Snoop exchanged phone numbers, a simple gesture that would later prove to be the beginning of an unexpected collaboration. "Let me know when you're in LA. Maybe we can connect on this beach thing or something else," Snoop offered, replacing his sunglasses as an airport announcement called for priority boarding at his gate. With a final fist bump and a promise to be in touch, the two parted ways, each heading toward their respective flights, unaware that their brief encounter had already begun circulating on social media, sparking excitement among their overlapping fan bases. If you're enjoying this incredible story so far, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe. Comment below what you think will happen next between MrBeast and Snoop Dogg. 3 days. After the chance encounter at Atlanta International Airport, Jimmy sat in his hotel suite in Los Angeles, reviewing footage from their first day of the beach cleanup project. The team had captured some compelling content. Volunteers collecting literal tons of trash from a once pristine stretch of Southern California coastline, emotional interviews with marine biologists about the impact of plastic pollution, and the shocked reactions of local environmental organizations when presented with substantial donation checks. Still, Jimmy couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing, an element that would elevate the video from merely successful, truly memorable, and impactful. "We need something to really drive home the message," Jimmy mused aloud to his team, who were scattered around the spacious suite, laptops open and half-eaten room service meals pushed aside. "The cleanup is great, the donation reveal works, but we need something that will make people really care, really want to take action themselves." This was the challenge that had defined Jimmy's career evolution, moving beyond spectacle and giveaways to content that inspired genuine change while still maintaining the entertainment value that had built his audience. It was a delicate balance, one he continuously refined with each new project. As if on cue, Jimmy's phone buzzed with an incoming call from an unfamiliar number with a Los Angeles area code. He almost declined it, assuming it was yet another business solicitation, but something prompted him to answer. "Hello?" he said cautiously, putting the call on speaker as he continued scrolling through footage on his laptop. The voice that responded triggered immediate recognition among everyone in the room, the unmistakable laid-back drawl causing heads to snap up from screens and conversations to halt mid-sentence. "Jimmy, it's Snoop. How's that beach project coming along?" For a moment, the room fell completely silent, the team exchanging glances of disbelief that Snoop Dogg had actually followed through on the casual connection made at the airport. Jimmy quickly recovered, his surprise giving way to professional courtesy. "It's going well. We cleaned up about 4 tons of trash today with volunteers, and we're filming more tomorrow. Still feels like we're missing something to really make the message stick, though." He hadn't planned to be so forthcoming about the project's challenges, but something about Snoop's casual approach invited honesty rather than the carefully curated responses typically reserved for potential collaborators. What Snoop said next would ultimately transform not just the beach cleanup video, but the trajectory of both their philanthropic efforts. "I've been thinking about what you're doing, and I want in. Not just as a cameo or some quick thing, but for real. My foundation has been looking to expand into environmental work, and this seems like the perfect way to start. Plus, my schedule just opened up tomorrow. Film shoot got postponed." The offer hung in the air, its potential immediately apparent to everyone in the room. Jimmy muted the call briefly to confirm with his team, who responded with enthusiastic nods and whispered exclamations. "We'd be honored to have you join us," Jimmy responded, unmuting the call. "We're starting at Malibu Lagoon State Beach at 8 a.m. But I want to make sure this works for both of us. What are you thinking in terms of involvement?" Always the strategist, Jimmy was already calculating how to integrate Snoop's participation in a way that would benefit both their brands and, more importantly, amplify the environmental message at the heart of the project. This wasn't about celebrity cameos. It was about leveraging combined influence for maximum impact. The conversation that followed lasted nearly an hour, evolving from a simple coordination of schedules to a comprehensive brainstorming session about how to merge their distinct audiences and approaches for a greater cause. Snoop revealed a surprising depth of knowledge about environmental issues, particularly those affecting communities of color, while Jimmy shared insights from his previous charity initiatives. By the time they ended the call, they had mapped out not just Snoop's participation in the beach cleanup, but the framework for a potential ongoing collaboration that would bridge generational and cultural gaps in environmental activism. "This changes everything," Nolan said after Jimmy hung up, voicing what everyone was thinking. "Snoop doesn't just bring star power. He brings a whole different demographic that might never have engaged with our content otherwise." Jimmy nodded, in agreement, already mentally reconfiguring the project's scope and potential impact. The team sprang into action, adjusting the next day's shooting schedule, preparing additional equipment, and reaching out to their contacts at various environmental organizations to coordinate expanded donation announcements. The energy in the room had transformed completely, a new sense of purpose and excitement permeating their preparations. Late into the night, Jimmy remained awake, researching Snoop's previous philanthropic work to better understand his approach and values. He discovered the Snoop Youth Football League, which had been providing structure and mentorship to inner-city kids for over 15 years, as well as numerous other community initiatives that received little media attention compared to Snoop's entertainment career. This wasn't a celebrity dabbling in charity for publicity. This was someone with a long-standing commitment to giving back, particularly to communities that reflected his own origins. The parallels to Jimmy's own evolution from pure entertainment to purpose-driven content were striking. At 6 a.m. the following morning, Jimmy and his team arrived at Malibu Lagoon State Beach an hour earlier than planned, wanting to ensure everything was perfectly prepared for Snoop's arrival. The sunrise cast a golden glow over the coastline, the beauty of the natural setting providing a poignant contrast to the pollution they were there to address. Additional volunteers had been recruited, many unaware of the surprise guest who would be joining them. Camera equipment was positioned strategically along the beach, ready to capture not just the cleanup efforts, but the unfiltered reactions to what would unfold that day. At precisely 8 a.m., a sleek black SUV pulled into the beach parking lot, followed by two identical vehicles, Snoop's security detail taking no chances even for a charitable event. As the rapper emerged from the middle SUV, several volunteers gasped in recognition, phones immediately raised to capture the unexpected celebrity appearance. What caught everyone by surprise, however, was not just Snoop's arrival but who accompanied him. Stepping out behind him were several other well-known musicians, actors, and social media influencers whom he had personally contacted after his call with Jimmy, expanding the collaboration far beyond what had been initially discussed. "Hope you don't mind I brought some friends," Snoop said casually as he approached Jimmy, gesturing to the group of celebrities who were already greeting volunteers and examining the cleanup equipment. "Figured if we're gonna do this, let's really do it, you know?" Jimmy stood momentarily speechless, the scope of what was unfolding exceeding even his ambitious vision. This wasn't just a content collaboration anymore. It was evolving into a cultural moment, a convergence of influence that could potentially reach hundreds of millions of people across vastly different demographics. The beach cleanup had transformed overnight from a standard MrBeast video into something with far greater potential impact. As Jimmy introduced Snoop to his team and the environmental experts present, the genuine connection between the two content creators was immediately apparent to everyone watching. Despite their different backgrounds, ages, and public personas, they shared a fundamental understanding of how to leverage attention for positive change. They moved through the crowd of volunteers together, Jimmy explaining the logistics of the cleanup, while Snoop added his own perspective on why the work mattered, particularly to coastal communities and future generations. Their natural rapport created a comfortable atmosphere that allowed their respective entourages to integrate seamlessly. What nobody anticipated, however, was what Snoop would say during the pre-cleanup briefing to the volunteers and assembled celebrities. As Jimmy concluded his explanation of the day's goals, he handed the microphone to Snoop, expecting perhaps a few motivational words or a casual endorsement of the project. Instead, the rapper removed his sunglasses, his expression uncharacteristically serious as he addressed the crowd. "Before we get started, I want to share something personal with y'all," he began, his voice lacking its usual lighthearted tone. "My grandson was diagnosed with asthma last year. The doctors told us part of it is the air quality where we live, all the pollution and chemicals in the environment." The crowd fell silent as Snoop continued, revealing a vulnerability rarely seen in his public appearances. "That hit me different, you know? I've had all this success, all these resources, but I can't fix the air my grandson breathes. That's when I realized this environmental stuff isn't just some distant problem. It's affecting our kids, our families right now." His voice wavered slightly, genuine emotion breaking through his typically smooth delivery. "So when I ran into this young man," he gestured toward Jimmy, "and heard about what he's doing, it felt like more than coincidence. It felt like an opportunity to use our platforms for something that really matters, something that affects all of us regardless of where we come from." If this story has touched your heart so far, don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button. Leave a comment below sharing what environmental cause matters most to you. The emotional weight of Snoop's words hung in the air, creating a moment of genuine connection among everyone present. Volunteers who had arrived expecting a straightforward beach cleanup found themselves moved by the unexpected vulnerability from a cultural icon known more for his laid-back persona than emotional disclosures. Jimmy, standing beside Snoop, noticed several people wiping away tears, including members of his own production team who had witnessed countless emotional moments throughout their philanthropic projects, but were nonetheless affected by the rapper's sincerity. What had begun as a content collaboration was evolving into something far more meaningful. Without missing a beat, Jimmy stepped forward, instinctively understanding that this moment needed to be honored rather than simply captured for content. "Thank you for sharing that, Snoop," he said, his own voice carrying an emotional resonance that his regular viewers would recognize as completely authentic. "This is exactly why these projects matter, because behind all the statistics and scientific reports are real people, real families being affected right now." He turned to address the assembled volunteers and celebrities. "Today isn't just about cleaning one beach or creating one video. It's about starting a conversation that reaches people who might never have engaged with environmental issues otherwise." What followed was a transformation of the day's planned activities, with the cleanup itself becoming almost secondary to the powerful discussions that emerged as participants worked alongside one another. Camera crews captured Snoop and Jimmy, engaged in deep conversation while collecting plastic waste from the shoreline, their discussion ranging from the disproportionate impact of pollution on low-income communities to the responsibility that came with their massive platforms. Other celebrities followed their lead, sharing personal stories about environmental concerns while working alongside everyday volunteers, creating content that was as educational as it was compelling. During a brief water break, Snoop pulled Jimmy aside away from the cameras and the crowd. "I've been thinking," he said, his voice low and serious. "One day of cleanup and one video is good, but it's not enough. What if we turned this into something bigger? A campaign, a challenge to other influencers and celebrities, maybe even a foundation?" The suggestion aligned perfectly with thoughts Jimmy had been cultivating himself, the potential for expanded impact immediately apparent. What if their chance encounter at the airport could become the catalyst for an environmental movement that bridged generational, cultural, and socioeconomic divides? By midday, what had been planned as a standard MrBeast philanthropic video had evolved into the framework for Clean Future, a multi-platform campaign that would leverage both their enormous audiences to drive environmental action. Using their phones and the production equipment on hand, they recorded an impromptu announcement video challenging other content creators and celebrities to not only donate to environmental causes, but to actively participate in cleanup efforts in their own communities. The challenge included a commitment from both Jimmy and Snoop to match donations up to a combined total of $2 million, a figure that caused audible gasps among the production team. As word spread about what was unfolding at Malibu Lagoon State Beach, local news crews began to arrive, sensing that this was more than just another celebrity charity event. Jimmy and Snoop, both skilled at navigating media attention, welcomed the additional coverage, recognizing that mainstream news would reach demographics that might never encounter their content on YouTube or social media. They gave brief interviews, emphasizing the urgency of environmental action and the power of collaborative efforts across cultural and generational lines. Their natural chemistry and shared passion translated beautifully on camera, creating compelling footage that would soon be broadcast beyond their usual platforms. The cleanup itself yielded impressive results. Over 7 tons of waste removed from the beach and surrounding areas, much of it plastic that would have eventually made its way into the ocean. Environmental experts on site provided context about the impact of such efforts, while also emphasizing that cleanups alone were insufficient without addressing the root causes of pollution. This educational component was integrated seamlessly into the content being created, fulfilling Jimmy's initial goal of making a video that would not only entertain, but inform and inspire action. Snoop's presence and personal story added an emotional dimension that elevated the material beyond typical environmental messaging. As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the now cleaner beach, the day's participants gathered for a final address from the unexpected duo at the center of it all. Exhausted but exhilarated, volunteers and celebrities alike formed a loose semicircle around Jimmy and Snoop, phones raised to capture what had become a genuinely historic collaboration. The atmosphere was charged with a sense of accomplishment and possibility, the tangible results of their day's work visible in the dozens of filled trash bags stacked nearby, waiting for proper disposal and recycling. "What we did today matters," Jimmy began, his voice carrying across the attentive crowd. "But what happens tomorrow matters even more. This isn't about one beach or one day or one video. It's about continuing the work in our own communities, using whatever influence we have, whether that's millions of followers or just our circle of friends and family, to create real change." His words were met with nods of agreement and scattered applause, the sincerity of his commitment evident to everyone present. For those who had followed his content evolution over the years, this represented the fullest expression of his platform's potential for positive impact. Snoop stepped forward next, his tall frame silhouetted against the setting sun. "Today I saw something beautiful," he said, gesturing toward the diverse group assembled before him. "I saw people from different generations, different backgrounds, different everything coming together for something bigger than themselves. That's powerful. That's how real change happens." He paused, his gaze sweeping across the crowd before settling on Jimmy beside him. "And I want to thank this young man right here for not just talking about making a difference, but actually putting in the work. That's something I respect deeply." The mutual respect between the two creators was palpable, their unlikely partnership a powerful symbol of how collaboration could transcend the usual boundaries of age, background, and content genre. As they concluded their remarks, they unveiled the official logo for the Clean Future campaign, which had been hastily designed by their combined creative teams during breaks in the cleanup activities. The logo featured a stylized earth with elements that subtly incorporated both of their brand identities, a visual representation of their merged missions. Social media handles and a website URL were announced, the digital infrastructure for their new initiative already being built even as they stood on the beach. Before departing, Jimmy and Snoop took time to personally thank every volunteer, taking photos and recording brief video messages for those who requested them. This wasn't the efficient, content-optimized approach that might have been expected, but rather a genuine expression of gratitude that prioritized human connection over production schedules. The sun had fully set by the time the last participants left the beach, leaving just the core teams from both camps to finalize equipment packing and logistics. As they worked in the fading light, A sense of having participated in something truly significant permeated the atmosphere, transcending the already ambitious goals with which they had begun the day. Don't miss a single moment of this incredible journey. Subscribe now and hit that notification bell. If you're loving this collaboration, show your support with a like and share your thoughts in the comments. By sunrise the following morning, clips from the beach cleanup had already begun circulating across social media platforms, sparking a digital wildfire that neither Jimmy nor Snoop could have fully anticipated. The emotional moment when Snoop shared the story about his grandson's asthma diagnosis had been captured by multiple phones and cameras, each version spreading through different segments of their combined audiences. The raw vulnerability from a cultural icon known more for his laid-back public persona resonated deeply, particularly with demographics that might normally scroll past environmental content without engagement. Overnight, the hashtag #AuchCleanFuture had begun trending across multiple platforms, signaling the birth of something far beyond a standard collaboration video. Jimmy woke to hundreds of notifications on his phone, including messages from other major content creators and celebrities pledging their support for the nascent campaign. His team had been monitoring the online response throughout the night, sending him periodic updates about the exponential growth in engagement. What struck Jimmy most as he reviewed the data over his morning coffee wasn't just the volume of interaction, but its diversity. The initiative was reaching far beyond his typical audience demographics, extending into communities and age groups that had previously seemed inaccessible. This was precisely the cross-pollination of influence that he had hoped might result from working with Snoop. Across town, Snoop was experiencing a similar deluge of support and attention, including calls from music industry peers and entertainment executives interested in amplifying the campaign. His social media team reported that his posts about the beach cleanup were receiving engagement rates significantly higher than his typical content, with particularly strong responses from parents and older followers who connected with his story about his grandson. The rapper, never one to miss an opportunity to maximize impact, had already begun reaching out to his extensive network of contacts across entertainment, sports, and business, leveraging decades of relationship building to secure additional support for the initiative. By mid-morning, Jimmy and Snoop reconnected via video call, both slightly overwhelmed by the magnitude of the response, but equally determined to harness the momentum. "This is way bigger than I expected. Way faster than I expected," Jimmy admitted, running a hand through his disheveled hair, evidence of the early start to what would undoubtedly be a long day. Snoop nodded in agreement, his usual calm demeanor intact despite the whirlwind of attention. "That's because it's real," he responded simply. "People can feel the difference between a marketing stunt and something that comes from a genuine place. What happened yesterday was genuine." The Compton hub opening generated another wave of media attention, but with a markedly different tone than the initial viral explosion. Coverage focused less on the celebrity founders and more on the community impact and the replicable model being established. Major news outlets sent journalists to report on the practical outcomes of what many had initially dismissed as just another trending hashtag, finding instead a substantive initiative with measurable results. Environmental experts who had initially been skeptical of a movement led by a YouTube philanthropist and a rap icon were now citing Clean Future as an example of effective cross-demographic mobilization, acknowledging that its cultural relevance had reached audiences that traditional environmental advocacy had failed to engage. Behind the scenes, the unlikely friendship between Jimmy and Snoop had deepened through their shared mission, transcending their initial mutual respect to become a genuine bond. Despite their different backgrounds, ages, and public personas, they had discovered fundamental similarities in their approaches to using their platforms for positive impact. Regular video calls to coordinate campaign efforts often extended well beyond their scheduled times, evolving into wide-ranging conversations about everything from content creation philosophies to personal challenges of maintaining authenticity amid enormous public attention. This genuine connection continued to infuse the campaign with an emotional resonance that resonated with audiences, particularly when they made joint appearances or released collaborative content. By the 3-month mark, Clean Future had expanded to include 5 community hubs across the country, each adapted to local needs while maintaining the core mission of environmental education and action. The campaign had also launched a digital platform that connected supporters with local initiatives, tracked measurable impact metrics, and provided resources for individuals wanting to reduce their environmental footprint. corporate partnerships had been carefully vetted and limited to companies making verifiable commitments to sustainable practices, with transparency reports published monthly to maintain accountability. The initiative had evolved from a viral moment to a structured organization with dedicated staff, clear objectives, and measurable outcomes. What particularly surprised industry observers was how the campaign maintained momentum long after the initial viral surge had subsided. Rather than following the typical pattern of rapid rise and equally rapid decline that characterized most internet phenomena, Clean Future had established a sustainable presence both online and in physical communities. This longevity was attributed largely to the authentic foundation upon which it had been built, the genuine connection between its founders, the emotional resonance of Snoop's personal story, and the tangible impact that supporters could see and participate in. Unlike movements built primarily on outrage or fleeting emotional responses, this initiative had tapped into deeper human desires for connection, purpose, and intergenerational collaboration. The educational component of the campaign had expanded significantly, with curriculum materials developed in partnership with environmental educators now being used in schools across the country. These resources, available for free download from the Clean Future website, integrated scientific information about environmental challenges with practical action steps and digital literacy skills. Teachers reported high engagement levels with the materials, particularly among students who had previously shown limited interest in environmental topics. The integration of familiar cultural references and contemporary digital elements made the content accessible and relevant to young people, while the involvement of respected figures from different generations gave it credibility across age demographics. Corporate accountability became another unexpected focus area of the campaign, with the Clean Future Transparency Index emerging as an influential tool for evaluating companies' environmental commitments. The index, developed in collaboration with environmental scientists and business ethics experts, went beyond assessing superficial green marketing to evaluate substantive policies, supply chain practices, and measurable outcomes. Companies scoring well on the index experienced positive consumer response, while those receiving poor ratings faced public pressure to improve their practices. This market-based approach to environmental advocacy represented a pragmatic dimension of the campaign that complemented its emotional core and community focus. Perhaps most significantly, the campaign had successfully bridged demographic divides that had previously hampered environmental movements. Data analysis of engagement metrics revealed participation across age groups, political affiliations, geographic regions, and socioeconomic backgrounds. The unique combination of Jimmy's young, digitally native audience and Snoop's broad cultural influence had created entry points for demographics that traditional environmental advocacy had struggled to reach. This diverse coalition was particularly evident in the community hubs, where grandparents worked alongside teenagers, finding common purpose despite differences that might otherwise have kept them separated in increasingly polarized social landscapes. 6 months after their chance encounter at the Atlanta airport, Jimmy and Snoop stood together on a different beach, this one in Jimmy's home state of North Carolina. They were surrounded by hundreds of volunteers participating in the campaign's first National Day of Action, with simultaneous cleanups taking place in communities across the country. As they worked side by side, picking up debris alongside supporters of all ages, they reflected on the unexpected journey that had brought them to this moment. "If someone had told me 6 months ago that a random airport meeting would lead to all this," Jimmy said, gesturing to the massive volunteer effort around them, "I would never have believed it." Snoop nodded in agreement, his expression thoughtful, beneath the brim of his Clean Future branded cap. "We've reached the final chapter of this incredible journey. If you've been inspired by this story, now is the time to hit subscribe, like, and share with everyone who needs to hear about making a difference. Let's build a sexier, clean future together." 1 year after the fateful airport encounter that sparked an environmental movement, Jimmy and Snoop stood on a stage at the United Nations Climate Action Summit, preparing to address an audience of world leaders, corporate executives, and environmental advocates. Behind them, a large screen displayed the Clean Future logo alongside impressive impact metrics. 25 community hubs established across 3 continents. Over 500,000 tons of waste removed from natural environments. Educational programs reaching millions of students, and corporate accountability measures that had influenced policy changes at over 100 major companies. What had begun as a chance meeting between two content creators from different worlds had evolved into one of the most effective environmental initiatives of the decade. As Jimmy stepped up to the microphone, he appeared momentarily overwhelmed by the significance of the moment, a rare display of uncertainty from someone accustomed to commanding attention. "A year ago," he began, his voice steadying as he spoke, "I was just trying to make a video about beach cleanup that would get people to care. I never imagined standing here today." He glanced at Snoop beside him, a gesture that acknowledged the unexpected partnership at the heart of their success. "What I've learned through this journey is that the most powerful catalyst for change isn't technology or money or even influence. It's authentic human connection across the divides that usually separate us." Snoop took his turn at the podium next, his characteristic laid-back demeanor infused with a gravity appropriate to the setting. "When I shared the story about my grandson's asthma that day on the beach, I wasn't thinking about starting a movement. I was just speaking my truth as a grandfather worried about his family's future." He paused, scanning the audience of global decision-makers. "But that's what connected with people. Not statistics or doomsday predictions, but a human story they could relate to. We've built this whole campaign on that foundation. Real people, real stories, real connections across generations and communities." Their joint presentation outlined the key principles that had made Clean Future effective, where many other environmental initiatives had faltered. The bridge between digital engagement and local action, the emphasis on community-specific solutions, rather than top-down approaches, the strategic use of cultural influence to reach beyond traditional environmental audiences, and the integration of rigorous accountability measures with emotionally resonant messaging. As they spoke, delegates from countries around the world took notes, recognizing that this case study in cross-demographic mobilization offered valuable lessons for addressing climate challenges that required broad public support and behavioral change. What made the UN presentation particularly impactful was the inclusion of video testimonials from Community Hub participants, everyday people whose lives and neighborhoods had been transformed through involvement with the initiative. A teenager from Detroit described how the local hub had given her both environmental awareness and digital skills that had opened career possibilities she'd never previously considered. An elderly man from a rural community in Tennessee explained how the program had reconnected him with younger generations in his town, giving him a sense of purpose and hope for the future. These personal stories embodied the human impact behind the impressive statistics, demonstrating that environmental action could simultaneously address social isolation and community fragmentation. Following the summit, Jimmy and Snoop were approached by representatives from several national governments interested in adapting the Clean Future model for their own environmental initiatives. What these officials recognized was that the campaign had succeeded not just in removing waste from the environment, but in changing the cultural conversation around environmental responsibility, making it relevant and accessible to demographics that had previously been disengaged or skeptical. The founders agreed to develop a framework that could be adapted across different cultural contexts while maintaining the core principles that had made their approach effective. The international expansion represented a new chapter for the initiative, but Jimmy and Snoop remained committed to maintaining the authentic foundation upon which it had been built. They insisted that any adaptation of their model must include genuine community involvement, rather than mere top-down implementation, regardless of how efficiently the latter might be executed. This principled stance occasionally created friction with potential partners accustomed to more controlled approaches, but it preserved the integrity that had been essential to the campaign's success and credibility among diverse audiences. Reflecting on the journey during a quiet moment away from the summit's activities, Snoop expressed a perspective that captured the deeper significance of their collaboration. "You know what's beautiful about this whole thing?" he said to Jimmy as they looked out over the city skyline from a hotel balcony. "We created something that's bigger than both of us, something that will keep growing even if we stepped away tomorrow. That's real legacy." Jimmy nodded in agreement, understanding that what they had built transcended personal brand or content metrics, addressing a fundamental human desire to make a meaningful contribution to the world's well-being. The personal friendship that had developed between them continued to surprise observers who saw only their surface differences rather than their core similarities. Despite the 3-decade age gap and their vastly different public personas, they had found in each other a shared understanding of platform responsibility and authentic influence that transcended generational divides. Their regular collaboration sessions, now formalized as part of the campaign's governance structure, frequently evolved beyond strategic planning into philosophical discussions about digital culture, intergenerational knowledge transfer, and the future of influence in an increasingly fragmented media landscape. This genuine connection remained visible in their public appearances and continued to resonate with audiences accustomed to more superficial celebrity partnerships. When they visited community hubs together, their natural rapport and mutual respect created an atmosphere that invited authentic engagement from participants of all ages. Younger volunteers connected with Jimmy's digital native approach and entrepreneurial energy, while older community members appreciated Snoop's life experience and cultural longevity. Together, they embodied the cross-generational collaboration that the campaign promoted as essential for addressing long-term environmental challenges. The educational dimension of Clean Future had expanded significantly, with the development of a comprehensive curriculum that integrated environmental science, digital literacy, community organizing, and creative expression. This multidisciplinary approach reflected the founders' recognition that environmental challenges required holistic solutions that engaged different types of intelligence and learning styles. The curriculum, made freely available to schools worldwide, was designed to be adaptable across cultural contexts while maintaining core scientific accuracy and action orientation. Early assessment data indicated that students engaged with these materials showed not only increased environmental knowledge, but greater civic engagement and critical thinking skills. As the campaign's second year approached, Jimmy and Snoop faced decisions about its long-term structure and leadership. Both recognized the importance of institutionalizing the initiative beyond their personal involvement, ensuring its sustainability regardless of their other professional commitments or public attention spans. Working with nonprofit governance experts, they established a foundation structure with a diverse board that included environmental scientists, community organizers, digital platform specialists, and youth representatives. This structure balanced professional expertise with lived experience, creating an organization that could evolve while maintaining connection to its grassroots origins. On the anniversary of their airport meeting, Jimmy and Snoop returned to Atlanta for the groundbreaking ceremony of what would become the largest Clean Future hub to date, a comprehensive facility that would combine environmental education, technology training, community organizing space, and a research center focused on urban sustainability solutions. As they stood together with shovels in hand, prepared to turn the first ceremonial soil, they exchanged a glance that acknowledged the extraordinary journey from chance encounter to global movement. Around them, hundreds of supporters from all walks of life had gathered to witness the moment, many wearing the distinctive Clean Future shirts that had become symbols of environmental commitment across demographic divides. "I never thought an airport delay could change my life," Jimmy said to the assembled crowd, drawing laughs from those familiar with how the story began. But that's the thing about unexpected connections. They can lead to possibilities you never imagined. Snoop nodded in agreement before adding his perspective. "And that's the message we want everyone to take from this story. You don't need to be a famous YouTuber or rapper to make a difference. You just need to be willing to reach across whatever divides exist in your own community and find common purpose with people you might not normally connect with." As they broke ground together, the symbolism was clear to everyone present. Environmental renewal and human connection were inseparable aspects of the same essential work. The ceremony concluded with a surprise announcement that captured the initiative's evolution from content collaboration to substantive movement. The Clean Future Fellowship would provide funding and mentorship for young innovators developing solutions to environmental challenges in their local communities, with particular emphasis on applicants from underserved areas. The first year would support 50 fellows across 10 countries, creating a global network of next-generation environmental leaders connected through both digital platforms and in-person exchanges. This investment in human capital represented the founders' understanding that lasting change required not just immediate action, but the development of leadership capacity for ongoing innovation and adaptation to evolving challenges. As the sun set on the groundbreaking ceremony, casting long shadows across what would soon become a hub of environmental activity and cross-generational collaboration, Jimmy and Snoop found a quiet moment amid the departing crowd. "Did you ever imagine," "This is where we'd end up when you spotted me at that airport?" Snoop asked, echoing the question he had posed many months earlier. Jimmy smiled, shaking his head in wonder at the journey they had traveled. Not even close. But that's the best part of this whole story. It wasn't planned or scripted. It just unfolded naturally from that first authentic connection. As they walked together toward the waiting vehicles that would take them to their next destinations. Their unlikely friendship stood as a powerful symbol of what becomes possible when apparent differences give way to shared purpose and genuine human connection. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this incredible story of how an unexpected airport meeting between MrBeast and Snoop Dogg created a global movement for environmental change. Comment below with your own ideas for building a cautious, clean future in your community, and join the movement today.